Welcome to SpotOn Profile Basics. Each webinar covers one module within Zoracle's SpotOn profile. Let's join Rebecca Monet, President and Chief Scientist of Zoracle Profiles now, as she discusses cultural fit.
I'm going to cover today an area called culture or cultural fit. It's basically on page 3 of your assessment. So let's talk a little bit about the DNA of culture. So establishing a vibrant, healthy, and adaptive culture is the foundation for any high-performing franchise organization. Culture is a complex issue that essentially includes all of a group's shared values, their attitudes, their beliefs, their behaviors, and of course, a franchisor's best practices. So culture is broad and it encompasses all the aspects of a group's internal as well as external relationships. And culture is deep in that it guides an individual's actions, even to the extent that members are not aware that they're being influenced by it. We frequently see culture by looking from the outside in. Companies themselves are not always aware of what their culture is. But as folks that are working with prospective franchisees, we need to understand someone's values, their beliefs, their attitudes, how they work best within certain cultures, so we can help them find a good fit, a good business just for them. So predicting compatibility and performance is highly dependent on getting your franchisees to fit well within a culture. Now I want to point out that cultural compatibility is a key indicator of performance. And so you're looking for a prospective franchisee that fits well within a franchise organization. That alone, even without all the competencies necessary of running a business, is going to increase their likelihood of greater performance within that system. They're going to feel more comfortable, they're going to feel compatible, and they're going to be more effective and ultimately build a stronger business. So cultural compatibility is super, super important. Let's talk about some of the reasons it's important from the franchisor's perspective. A franchisee is a reflection of the brand. So their job is to protect the brand equity. Something goes wrong at the franchisee's level. Somebody has a bad experience with a franchisee. A consumer walks into a particular retail location and has a bad experience. That perception from that consumer then spreads to others as they spread that word. So franchisor is always looking to protect his brand equity and wants to make sure that his franchisees are a reflection of his culture, of the way they do business. So it's important for us to make sure our prospects fit within that culture so they can be an extension of that brand. Franchisees that are compatible not only do better, but they validate better and they're more satisfied within a system. Think of it as a marriage almost, where you share values and you share best practices and you share attitudes. I want to feel comfortable within that particular system. Let me give you a few examples. You have probably seen this on your assessment. There's probably 30 or 40 companies that will spin out and be printed on the results of your assessment. The reason for these is so you, and as well as your prospective franchisee, can look at the culture of these organizations. Now, 99% of them are not franchises, and that's deliberately so, but I want our prospective franchisee, and I want you to begin to look at that part of the assessment where a single logo will come out and says your prospect will fit into a culture that is similar to one of these. And that will give your prospect an opportunity to look, what is that culture? Is it a collaborative culture? Is it a very competitive culture? Is it a culture that's innovative and always creating? What kind of a culture is that particular company? And now that I better understand what that culture is, let me go out and find a franchise system that has a similar kind of culture where I can express myself as a prospective franchisee. So this work actually comes from Robert Quinn. Originally, the work started with John Campbell. You'll always notice I gave credit where credit is due, so this is borrowed work. We simply apply it to the world of franchising. So John Campbell in 1974 identified 39 different indicators of what culture is. Now 39 indicators is an awful lot of pieces. So Robert Quinn basically took a look at that, and he determined there are two major dimensions that go horizontal and vertical, you'll see again, that helps us begin to define what a franchisor's culture is. So if we look horizontally, we're looking to the left, we have companies that are internally focused. They're focused on what's going on within their operations. They're all about integration. They're all about unity. These will be the companies that you will see in franchising that have things centralized. They have things where it's more kind of a cookie cutter type of thing. It's all about us working in unison within the corporation as well as with our franchisees. If we go to the right, this is an external focus. We're now focused outside of ourselves, outside of the company. We're focusing on our competition. We're focusing on what others are doing in terms of products and services. We're paying attention to our rivals. So internal, we're just systematizing and we're perpetuating and we're fine-tuning and we're doing everything possible to be the best, but we're not as concerned about the outside. We're concerned about our products and service, and all of us working in unison together to build a strong team. If we're on the right side, the horizontal side, we're now focused on the rivals and we're trying to be predictive about what's happening. If we look at the vertical, the up and down, we'll notice that the folks down below here are into control, they're into order, they're into stability. So they're looking to get their businesses stable and secure and replicable and have some order. There's a cookie cutterness to it. It's about controlling systems and processes. That could be everything from the actual sales of the process to the legalities of that process. Above is a company that's more dynamic, has more discretion. It's more flexible. It's constantly changing and moving based on what the market is doing. So let's look specifically how that relates to franchising and relates to your prospective franchisee. So the control culture, as we notice over here, is dominantly controlled by a need for stability and a need for unity. So this is a culture that is always focusing on how do we stabilize and continue growing, and it could be incrementally, but we're not concerned about what's going outside. We're concerned about all of us as franchisees and corporate working in tandem. We're wanting things centralized, we want things integrated, and we want to focus on everyone within this culture being content and happy. These are organizations that frequently have employees that are there for 30 and 40 years. They may be going up the corporate ladder, but they're solid, stable. They're the Kellogg's of the world. So these are the industries or businesses that are focusing on centralization, integration, unity, creating control, and creating stability. So let's look at what a control organization is. A control organization, you've probably worked in some of them. It's probably why you left, because you're more entrepreneurial or you want something a little bit more flexible. Others fit really perfectly into this control environment. So there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of accountabilities within a control organization. It's all about efficiencies, long-term goals, or usually incremental goals over a period of time, and performance. There's a lot of spreadsheets in those board meetings, and we're looking at where we're going constantly. The focus of a control organization is how to deliver the product or service in the smoothest way possible with the lowest cost. So everything they're focusing on is taking off 6 cents off of that deliverable, outsourcing things, doing things in such a way where the focus is on delivering the product or service, doing it in the most effective and financially efficient way. So control culture, and I just drew this picture up there so you get a little bit of an idea of what it looks like. A control culture typically has many silos, many layers, where there's an expert in marketing, there's an expert in training, there's an expert in HR, there's an expert in technology, and they have others accountable to them. So it typically has many sort of layers, and the emphasis within a control culture is to respect a certain chain of command. This guy down below wouldn't go directly to this guy above. He would instead go to his superior, who would go to his superior, who would go to his superior. So you're all familiar with these kinds of companies. Now, part of the purpose of these additional silos, and we talked about this in the Stages of Growth presentation 2 weeks ago, is to create additional efficiencies and perfection. When you become an expert at something, you're better than someone who's a generalist. And a control culture understands that if we have experts in particular areas by creating separate silos and clear-cut accountabilities, we can take that 6 cents off of the actual delivery of that product, and we can still compete because it's better than what a competitor can put out, simply because we're controlling the process. So in the control culture, it's a lot about power and status and position, and helping the leaders to execute on strategic plans. So employees, franchisees, partnerships understand that working on this army, working together on this team will get us where we want to go. But we have to do it in unison. If we're in a control culture, we can't have a franchisee that's winging it or being too innovative or going outside of the box or the strategy that the control culture has created. If franchisee can work well within that, they love the control, they like the accountabilities, they want to know what's next and what to do in the morning and what to do in the evening and what to do on the last day of the month. If they like that, this is a great fit. These are companies that are going to be around a long time into the future. So as you can probably guess, a control culture is very prevalent amongst large companies. Most businesses will demonstrate a certain amount of this in their day-to-day operations, especially in the areas of their own expertise. The point I want to make about the culture of control is this typically is a larger organization, and what they're looking for are franchisees that can accept these control measures and even respect and admire them, these quality control measures, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are some of your big multi-unit operators, your regional developers, will choose a control organization because they don't have to figure out the details. The details are already there. It's a plug and play. They can take a good manager, put them into that position, and it's unified, it's organized, it's integrated, everything is working perfectly. Which takes us to the next group. We call it the collaborative culture. A collaborative culture is on the vertical the same as the control. They are about unity. It's about us working well together. We're focused on us, the franchisees, corporate, our market. We're not concerned about the outside. We're concerned about getting our systems and our processes solidified, and we're going to be the best at what we're doing. But we have a slightly different approach than the control. It's not a top-down approach. With the control, the collaborative culture is more flexible. It's more collaborative. They are sharing best practices amongst the franchisees and with the corporate headquarters. So there's more flexibility, and it's a lot more dynamic than what we saw with the control culture. So the collaborative culture produces technically the highest level of employee as well as franchisee satisfaction, in part because we feel like we're working together, we're collaborating, but corporate is still all about control, it's all about systems, it's all about integrating, it's all about taking care of the franchisees. So it's still about stabilizing and unifying, but not at the expense of lack of creativity, lack of innovation, or lack of change. So it allows the franchisee to have a little bit more to say, as well as the employees to have a little more say. So a collaborate culture is a culture of teamwork and morale. Now I'm going to guess Franchise Broker Association is a collaborate culture. It's a culture that validates the input, the best practices that you bring to the table, but at the same time they're doing everything possible to stabilize and systematize and push out systems and processes that will have you not need to redo things that you've already done. So a collaborate culture is typically more of a flat culture. It actually is in many ways more like a family. It's a parent. It's an altruistic, all-loving a corporate office that then nurtures and mentors and pushes out knowledge and information to the franchisees. So it's almost paternalistic kind of a relationship, parent-child, but at the same time it's this tight-knit family that works and plays together. So it emphasizes this collaboration with one another as we mature in the business world as franchisees. We're collaborating with other peers, and corporate at the same time is doing what they need to do to put the structures and systems in. So the best of a control combined with a little bit of flexibility and this area of sort of collaborating and what I call co-opetition, where we're actually competing in various markets, but we're also cooperating. So it's more like a family, as I mentioned before. So the emphasis of a collaborate culture is on loyalty. We're in this together. We have a shared vision. We have a shared goal. We're working collectively to build a name, to build a reputation, to build a product or service. You're going to bring your talents to the table. Someone else is going to bring their talents to the table, and both are respected and appreciated, but at the same time, we're looking at memorializing, systematizing, and possibly even integrating where it makes it simpler for the next round of kids, franchisees, to come on to be more successful. That takes us to the create culture. Now notice we are now to the right of the vertical, which is now about rivalry. It's about competition. So a create culture is much like the collaborate culture in that it is more flexible and more dynamic. The focus here is on doing everything possible to innovate, to do it differently than the competitors are doing. So a create culture is focused on innovation, creativity, interesting twist to something, but they never forget there's competition out there, there are rivals out there that are on their heels. The way a create culture wins market share is by always being a bit ahead of the rivals. They're always just a little more innovative, and because they keep their structure so flexible, they're able to be much more agile than any other of these three cultures. They're much more flexible and much more nimble, and that along with their creativity, is what allows them to compete very well in the marketplace. So again, the focus on their competition, the focus on differentiating, usually that's through some form of innovation or creativity, and they have a very flexible organization that is able to change products, services, whatever is necessary to stay ahead of the competition. So the create culture, as I mentioned before, places its greatest importance on its innovation and its flexibility. Sometimes when you are looking at this, and from the outside into the franchise organization, that you're going to see is the create culture, you're going to think it is complete chaos. Okay, there's no order, there's no structure. Their value is not on structure and systems and processes. They know the way they can compete is by being different. And the minute they put too much, into memorializing systems and processes, it's at that point they lose their competitive advantage. So literally, this is an organization that moves and grows. Seth Godin, for those of you familiar with his work, talks a lot about the importance of create cultures and how they can compete. And they can compete by simply not getting too structured. Now, that's kind of counter what we know about franchising, right? We're looking for something that's a little closer to a plug and play. But if you're a prospective franchisee, scores within a create culture, we need to make sure we put him in a company that still has lots of room to innovate and lots of room to change, and is every single day looking a little chaotic or a little where we're going next. Don't worry about it. If you have a create culture prospective franchisee, they're going to love it. Might drive you nuts, but they're going to love it. So create culture is all about adaptability. It's all about quick reactions to the marketplace. It's all about predicting what's going to happen out in that marketplace, and they're constantly looking to innovate or be a part of whatever that change is. Oftentimes they are the difference makers, the change makers, the new concept that comes to the marketplace. The iPhone was an example of that when it first came out. Changed the marketplace in terms of phones. Now, did they continue to hold that market at some point? That's another story altogether, and you guys can read on that. So create culture leadership is about entrepreneurship, it's about risk-taking, and of course our franchisor that's in the create culture wants someone that's comfortable with that risk-taking and with kind of a wing-it kind of a style. So the emphasis on growth opportunities, and of course employees and franchisees are encouraged to innovate and try new ideas in the marketplace. Let's look at the compete culture. The compete culture is much like the create culture in that it is outwardly focused, and it's focused on being different. The difference between the create culture and the compete culture is this need for stability, the need for order, the need for systematization. Why can't I say that? Anyway, so it's about stability. It's about rivalry. And the compete culture is paying attention. They have their finger on the pulse of the market, but they're also at the same time working on systems and processes that will allow them to compete. So where the create culture may have been competing by completely innovating or changing the marketplace, a compete culture may find a way to compete through an unusual channel of market or a better way of delivering overnight versus 3 days. They'll find a way to compete that not necessarily as innovative as a compete, but simply because they're very good at something. So leaders within a compete culture are typically super hard driving, very demanding, very goal oriented. So it's always about winning. The compete culture is about getting to the top of the hill and then guarding their reputation and repeating that again and again. It's always about winning for them. So similar to the control culture, the emphasis is indeed on systems and processes and control and doing what's necessary to continue to have that same level of competitive advantage. So the compete culture, however, different than the control culture, is focused on external relationships, where the control culture was focused on internal. So the control culture is frequently creating a system, let's say, for our franchisees, where maybe you were in corporate office and now you're given a location to run, and then if you're successful at running that franchise, you're given a bigger territory. So almost a promotion versus a risk-taking adventure that you might see with a compete culture. So more internal versus external. So the compete culture is about creating external relationships. So they will be creating strategic alliances with others who think like themselves, partners, suppliers, franchisees, customers, but they're doing everything possible to create a certain level of loyalty, but it's not from in-house, it's from outside of it. So it could be co-branding, and you've seen this, franchisors who've taken two brands and put them together. So they're partnering so they can capture greater market share. So compete culture is the type of culture that is likely to bring about the greatest financial rewards. So there's enough paying attention to the outside world and partnering or connecting with the outside world, including their franchisees, that it gives them a competitive advantage. They may not be as innovative as the create culture, and they certainly aren't as buttoned down as the control culture, and they're not as warm and friendly as the collaborate culture, but they definitely have the competitive advantage simply because of their strategy to the marketplace and paying attention to what's going on. Now, sometimes the way they do this is through their pricing models. They're able to find a way to get that same product or service that that control company or that collaborate company is putting out there, but they're able to do it with a better pricing. Or they've simply attracted some of the best leaders and the leadership is extra strong. Their focus is on long-term, and it's always on goals, targets, achievement, and of course, beating the competition. It's not just beating the competition, but it's about winning. So we're going to wrap this up. This last slide. So we know what the culture of a franchise system is. And that requires, of course, for us to spend some time with the franchise organization. If you can go to the discovery process, is wonderful. If you can talk to more than just the franchise development person within that franchise system, talk to the leadership. That's going to be important. And the question you want to ask is, how do you do things around here? What is rewarded around here? Is this an organization that rewards sharing of best practices and has a warm kind of family atmosphere? Do you have a finger on the pulse of the market? Are you competitive? What about innovation? How do you feel about innovation? What about systems and processes? I mean, is there a ton of right ways of doing things and best practices? So ask the franchisor, how do you do things around here? And do the best you can to speak to some of the leadership within the franchise organization to get a better perspective. But remember, culture is oftentimes viewed more from outside than inside. You're going to notice what they don't notice. So I'm just suggesting at this point, take a moment, and I'm going to show you a couple of samples here real quickly of where you can find this on your assessment. And this is actually me doing a testing so I could save you guys looking at your own. So there's two places that we report the culture. First is on the summary page. It will always give you the two most important things to look for in a franchise. In this case, Rebecca is a create. I have to be in an organization where I can innovate and change, and I want my franchisor to also be innovative. But I'm not afraid of competition. I'm okay with rivals out there. I want to know what they're doing so I can position myself against that. So the two words you're looking for here is flexibility and rivalry. Rebecca is a create type of individual. She needs to be part of an organization that also enjoys innovating and appreciates whatever innovation she might bring to the system. So again, here we'll see that Rebecca is a create with the flexibility and rivalry. And then finally, your prospect will get a logo of a company that is most like what she fits in. These will not be franchise organizations. I don't want to be competing with you. These are just organizations out there that they can study. They can pick up case studies. In my case, I would work really well in an organization as a franchisee that looks similar to or is as innovative as Apple might be. I'm going to show you one more here. This is someone that scored as a collaborative. Again, on the first page, we see the two words that are important. It's about flexibility and unity. This is someone looking for a family. This is someone looking to go into a culture franchise system where there's flexibility, but she feels like she's one of them, with corporate as well as with all the other franchisees. So find her a business where she can do that. And let's scroll down to take a look again. But she's a collaborative individual looking for a family atmosphere. And so Cisco is a great example of that. If you've ever looked into Cisco, they have unbelievable programs to actually, even though it's a massive organization, it's also a family organization where they're encouraged to support one another.
To learn more about the SpotOn profile, take the assessment yourself by clicking on the link below. Or reach out to us directly for your 30-day free trial.